Everything that we say in this episode is a spoiler, so just general spoiler alert to everybody. And if you haven't read or seen Lord of the Rings, then go do that immediately.
Tolkien writes these stories to examine what happens when our lives become so much about grasping for power rather than living for goodness, for virtue, and that we end up living diminished lives.
We can turn to creation as our God, which we often do. In some sense, that's what we're doing in every sin. Or we can say, I'm above this. I don't need these things in creation, and reject them.
We have the Ring of Power, which is like this symbol of control over things, over the world, kind of technology of all technologies. And it has no power over Tom Bombadil. Basically, we all need to be Tom Bombadil in order to live in this world without being consumed by it.
What the devil tries to give us as anxiety, we can go into a certain bravery and saying, I don't even know if I'm going to have tomorrow. Like, I'm so worried.
We can become panicked and shut down at the thought of future battle and at the thought of like spiritual warfare or just human difficulties that we're going to encounter. Whereas the Lord gives us the grace that we need in the moment that we need it. He doesn't give us grace for tomorrow. He doesn't give us grace for even an hour from now. He only gives us the grace that we need right now.
Glory to Jesus Christ. It's Jelly. I'm here to welcome you to the What God Is Not podcast, where you can join Father Michael O'Loughlin and my godmother, Mother Natalia.
Glory to Jesus Christ.
Glory to him forever.
Oh, we can't hear Father Chris.
I didn't say anything.
Oh. Did you just not want to?
I just mouthed the response because I wasn't sure if the timing was going to work out.
Oh, no, you can talk at the same time as Father Michael. Please talk over him whenever you want, actually.
We have editors that will make everything copacetic, actually, in the end, no matter what we say. So
What does copacetic mean?
Good word. I was thinking the same thing.
it's from the 90s. Both of you are too young. And I think it just means proper and right. It means right and just. It's from the ancient liturgy of St. James.
He made that up, for the record. All of our listeners,
pretty
that
sure
word
that's from
is
the
not
ancient-
from the liturgy of St. James.
Google copacetic meaning.
Oh my gosh. That's a perfect introduction to what we're going to talk about, Father Chris.
But I don't think I knew that the it is right and just came from the liturgy of St. James.
It doesn't.
He just made that
Oh,
up.
you made that
That's
part
what
up
I'm
too.
saying.
I just
Everything.
say stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, this is
I thought
supposed to
just
be.
the copacetic. It was like, I knew that wasn't part of it.
This is supposed to be catechetical.
I'm actually
and
going to be.
instead
I'm
Father
actually going
Michael
to be
just-
teaching a class next semester.
I know.
I
It's
should
terrifying.
get all my bluffing out of the way before I do this.
Oh, if I-
What does copacetic mean?
It's unclear. Oh, very satisfactory.
Okay. Father Michael would always, when I was at his parish in Denver, if I he would like say that something was an ancient Byzantine tradition, and whenever he used that phrase, that's when I knew it was a lie. It's an ancient Byzantine tradition to wear a robe to liturgy on the feast of the deposition of the robe of the Theotokos.
Did you do that?
I almost did. And then he told me at the last second that it was a lie.
That was mostly our deacon.
That's true.
It
That was mostly the
It was
deacon.
not me. I think I can't go that long. My mother drilled into me, and I've shared this before, that I had to wait 15 seconds, and we had to say "just kidding" within 15 seconds, or it was a lie. My mom was very legalistic, but she had to be for us little kids. If it goes, so we'd count in our heads and wow, it's true. Mom knew we were kidding, so like even in the car, like she'd count. We'd say something, and she knew we were lying, and then we'd hear her counting. And then, like, we'd say right at 14 and a half seconds, just kidding.
Father Michael, I know you've told the story on the podcast before, but Father Chris hasn't heard it. Nobody knows who some people maybe know who Father Chris is, but we need to introduce him at some point. But can you tell this story of, it's hard because I want to look at you, but I also want to talk into the mic, the story of praying Hail Marys with, was it Sean?
It was Sean.
Yeah. Can you tell that story? Because this is super cute. This is like one of the cutest Father Michael stories.
I use this story whenever I'm talking about how our theological and spiritual competency changes as we grow up. So you explain things differently to a 2-year-old, of course, than you do for someone who's 12 than you do for someone who's 30. But we had Sean was probably almost 1.
This is Father Michael's brother.
I was 3 or 4, and my mom decided, I forget, I must have asked something, and she said, every time you pray a Hail Mary, you kill a devil. And I go, oh, wow. So again, this is how you talk to the 3 or 4-year-old. So I go and I get a piece of paper and I just grab my brother Sean and we go and sit underneath his crib. And I was like, well, 2 of us are praying, so we're going to kill 2 devils for every single one of them. So I was just basically like holding him up next to me and praying Hail Marys and like, okay, he's praying along with me. And I was putting tick marks on the piece of paper. And after probably 20 minutes of just praying a bunch of Hail Marys, I came to my mom so proud with the sheet of paper and said, look how many devils I just killed. And she was, of course, she was pleased with the prayerfulness of her son. But then she had to explain, well, devils don't actually die. And I vividly remember like distinguishing between making devils sad and killing them, because I remember later on when I got older with my friend Eric, every chance we would get, you
would hide under the crib together.
Yeah. Well, I remember being in a school gym and we kind of got into the corner and both of us just started cursing at the devil. F you, devil! You're a piece of like we're going on like in our heads. We would never cuss out loud. That was like that was so foreign to both of our disposition. Okay. But we would curse the devil and we would cuss at the devil, and we just thought that was like the coolest thing when we were probably like this is probably middle school, so 12 or 13. It's like we'd go off the devil and cursing at him. I would say. So yeah. Then we developed later on and realized that the devil liked us doing that. Anyway, we grow little by little. You're doing
well. That's the coffee mug. I was just pointing out the Hail Mary full of grace punch the devil in the face. So basically the same thing.
True.
That's true.
Well,
or Arius.
Yeah, either one.
You're the spiritual director at the seminary, right, Father? Okay, so you can correct me on my bad spirituality when it comes to cursing at the devil or killing devils.
But you're teaching at a seminary next year.
I am, but I'm not teaching spirituality. St. John's in Camarillo for LA. Okay. Yeah, I'm just teaching one class, pastoral counseling, basically practicum, just because I've been doing this for 20 years, so they trust me somehow.
That's great. Yeah, sure.
Your beard has gotten so long.
I know.
I really like it.
Doing it on purpose. My mom said she liked it, so I'm going to keep it. I don't like how wide it gets, though. Wide, W-I-D-E. I like it getting W-H-I-T-E.
There's a lot of white, but there's like red mixed in too.
I know. Actually, I was looking. My mirror at home is not good at all. So, like when I get to a really night, like in a hotel, I'm like, oh, I can actually see myself clearly, and like you can see the color differences in the beard. So, yeah.
I grew out some facial hair a few summers ago, and I came back. So I was out in Omaha for a program. I came back, and when my nieces saw me, they were horrified. And I was like, all right, well, we're getting rid of this.
Yep, Father Nathan Ad was my old assistant. He had to shave his beard because he had to put on an N95 mask to go visit his mother who had COVID. And so he had to wear it, so he had to shave his beard, and his daughters had never seen him without a beard. But they always tell you, and he knew this, he was just in a hurry, that if you're going to shave your beard for your kid, like shave it in front of them so they can see it go. And he was just in a hurry, and he didn't. And I remember he shaved right before we got in the car. I was driving him out to Phoenix to visit his mother, and his youngest, Molly, was just not having it. She wept until we're driving out of the driveway, and she's just weeping and weeping and weeping. And he's like, I don't know how to redeem myself now. I'm going to be gone for a week. I'm like, I know. That's hopefully Allie, his wife, will be able to calm the poor girl down. Yeah, she could not comprehend that her dad did not have a beard, and he just looked so odd to her. He looked odd to me too, but I didn't say that.
It's amazing how much one's look changes having a beard. Oh my goodness.
Mm-hmm. My dad didn't have a beard until after he got out of the military. Like, he was always clean shaven in the military. Mm-hmm. And so my whole experience growing up was him clean shaven. But now it would be very strange for me if he didn't have a beard. But Mother Ileana, when she was, I don't know how old she was probably like 4. And her family was on vacation for a week. And her dad is also an Eastern Catholic priest, and so always the beard. And she had never seen her dad without a beard. And they were on vacation, and they were in this place, and he went out early in the morning to go grocery shopping. And he also stopped at a barber or something and had his beard shaved. And so he comes back to the place where they're staying, and Mother Ileana sees him, and she just like, her response, she thinks someone's like breaking into the house with groceries. And she screams and throws herself backwards. Like, that's her response. And so Father Taras, we call him Father Tato, which basically means Father Daddy. But he drops the groceries and like runs and catches her before she hits the ground, which is a total dad move. But that's, yeah, she freaked out. Okay. I always try to make a transition here, and it's always terrible. And Father Mike, what are you looking at?
I'm looking at the banter times because I'm getting old and blind.
But Father Michael mentioned that Father Chris is spiritual director, and Father Chris mentioned his time in Omaha growing facial hair, and I'm going to tie those two things together by sharing how I know Father Chris and why he's here today. And I didn't think this through ahead of time, so that's really dangerous. But Father Chris and I met in January of, I almost said last year, but technically it's this year. It's last year as people are listening to this, though. Mm-hmm. And actually, probably like the day this comes out is almost exactly a year since I met you. And Father Chris came on retreat at the monastery, but he first met our community because he was on a 30-day retreat in Omaha through
Bismarck.
That's right. This has nothing to do with your time in Omaha. I forgot all of that. I'm sorry.
State, though, right,
I mean, loosely, very loosely.
You were on this 30 days so that you could like conduct 30-day retreats in Omaha?
No. Just the way that I knew the 30-day people is through who I know at Omaha. But
okay, yeah. Loose connection. I butchered this. Connection. Well,
so 30-day in Bismarck.
30-day in Bismarck, the New Jerusalem. Hey, Dokamos! Is there another Dokamos coming? Have you seen?
I don't know if she's coming yet.
Okay.
But I think she's coming.
You can talk now.
Everyone, this is Rose. I want to call her Dokamos Rose, but that's going to teach everyone incorrectly because we don't actually say that. We just say Rose. But Rose has been a member of our community for, I don't know, like 18 hours now or something
one
like that.
sleep.
Something like that.
Yeah, for one sleep. Exactly. That's how you explain it to little kids, right? You have to go to bed and get up 2 more times, and then you'll see Uncle. So anyways, Rose, you can squeeze in between us and then pop a squat in here, and those are your headphones. We didn't bring chairs in because this is like the comfiest floor, I think.
A very comfy carpet.
If I had grand plans of getting set up nice and early this morning, and then after I set up, I was going to take a nap on this floor because sleeping has not been a thing. But that didn't happen, and we were setting up far past the time that we were supposed to start. So Bismarck, North Dakota, is where Father Chris's 30-day was in. It was supposed to be in the Holy Land, but then COVID, and so it was moved to University of Mary. In Bismarck. So they called it the New Jerusalem. At least that's what Mother Cecilia and Mother Gabriela were calling it. I don't know if all of y'all were doing that.
I wasn't even supposed to go when it was in the Holy Land.
Oh.
So, yeah, because of COVID, I went on this 30-day.
I should just be letting you tell this story because I'm getting all the details wrong.
His real name's not actually Father Chris.
That's right.
He's like
That's right.
It was too awkward by the time. So anyways, he met Mother Cecilia and Mother Gabriela there, and then he was supposed to come on retreat here the next year, and I totally butchered it, and everything was my fault, and so Father Chris suddenly couldn't come on retreat, and he went somewhere else, and because I'm the worst. And then he did come on retreat in January of this year, and that's where we met, and so you're in charge of spiritual formation.
So I'm the coordinator of spiritual formation at JP2 Seminary.
In Washington, D.C.
In Washington, yeah.
Oh, there's another Dokimos. Madison.
Very good video now.
This is Madison, now Dokimos, member of the community for One Sleep,
Prison Mike.
also known as R. Maddie.
Okay. Yes.
What did you say?
Prison Mike from The Office with the do-rag.
Oh, yeah, durag. I told Matt, I'm going to embarrass you.
Okay.
I told Madison last night that she looked really pretty in her headscarf. And I think it's because it like really makes her eyes pop. Did you notice that? And she didn't believe me. And then a 7-year-old this morning told her she was pretty. And that was totally, she believed that.
You want to see here? We have headphones for
Yeah.
you, Maddie.
And then we can, should we scoot or no?
By the way, Dokimos is level 1 of the game of monasticism, and they're on level 1, and they have not received permission to give any sort of authoritative advice on podcasts. So blink twice if Mother Natalia is being mean to you.
Did you blink twice?
You didn't blink at all, not even once.
Well, that's a lie. I'm always mean to Maddie. I'm not. You're right.
Once she gets to know you better, she'll be mean to you too, Rose.
I do tease Rose also, actually. Like sometimes we call her Rose Nose because Rose knows like everything. And so if ever there's a question then we just ask Rose because Rose knows. And her family knows about this nickname. And so I know you weren't here when this happened. So they were talking to me the other night, and they were like, it's really fun that you call Rose knows and whatever. And I said, yeah, but sometimes I say to her, Rose thinks she knows. And so that was fun.
She's going to have a column called Rose-splaining in your newsletter.
I don't get it.
No, you're none. That's why.
Oh, like a play on mansplaining?
Mansplaining,
Oh,
yes.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's Mother Natalia splaining, which Maddie says I do. Well, if people just understood
my
things, I
cross
wouldn't have to. Your cross is shining. And my elven brooch, is that the right word?
I
think
Brooch.
say
Brooch.
That's at least, I don't know how they pronounce it, but it's...
in Omaha, it's
yeah.
brooch.
Why are you doing that? You're going to blind our listeners with your bling.
I'm counting this as banter.
No, don't count it as banter, because that's going to be a really embarrassing banter time.
Long banter.
I know. It's not my fault. I just keep getting distracted, which is my fault. So, Father Chris is the coordinator of spiritual direction, JP2 Seminary, whatever. The reason you're on, not whatever, that's very important. I'm glad that you're forming seminarians to be good men and maybe one day priests.
And why does he live in a hole in the ground?
So
Fair
Father Michael's
question.
transitioning.
The beard's gotta go. You just made him turn
Right back.
beet red. I'm always beet red, but you just made
That it's not difficult to do. He
No,
often blushes. Your mom told me to please make sure I made you blush on the podcast. Since I was like, that
well
will not
done,
be
Father
hard.
Michael.
Yeah, who knew it was going to be Father Michael who did it? Right. So you're here because you're in a hobbit hole.
Right.
Can you? So this is related to the 30-day because I was hoping you would share how Lord of the Rings was a part of your 30-day. Yeah.
Okay, so when I was on the 30-day retreat, so I didn't bring any reading with me. I just brought a Bible, right? And so it's like, which is great. And you're doing so much imaginative prayer during the Ignatian spiritual exercises, right? 4 or 5 holy hours a day. You're getting up in the middle of the night to do a holy hour, all these different things. And the problem is that like after dinner and my last holy hour, it was like 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the evening, and it's Bismarck in July. So the sun is still bright as can be, but I need to go to bed because I have to wake up in the middle of the night to know the holy hour. So, but I didn't have any books with me to like help me ease into bed and to sleep. And so I just went in my mind, like imaginative prayer, chapter by chapter, through Lord of the Rings because I just know Lord of the Rings really well. And so I would just go through and imagine the scenes, and it was delightful. And I would go to sleep thinking of hobbits and elves.
He knows it so well that I'm rereading Lord of the Rings right now. And when I told him where I was, not what chapter I was in, just like what was going on, he was like, oh, so you're about to hit this chapter, and names the chapter title. I was like, that is impressive.
I do have to say, we were asking Rose's family last night because they were lamenting the fact that Tom Bombadil was not in the movies. And I was saying, well, what if Peter Jackson just made a Tom Bombadil series or a Tom Bombadil movie, and who would play Tom Bombadil? And I'm going to vote for you, Father. You are smiley and joyful, and well, I could see it.
So this is actually quite fitting because Tom Bombadil, if we end up talking about, so Lord of the Rings has been like in my heart since the first time I read it, but it's formed so much of how I see the world because of Tolkien writing it, especially to kind of give a story to our use of technology and mastery over the world. And so you have the Ring of Power, which is like this symbol of control over things, over the world, kind of technology of all technologies. And it has no power over Tom Bombadil. And so much of I wrote my dissertation on our use of smartphones, different things. And I had in the back of my mind, like basically we all need to be Tom Bombadil in order to live in this world without being consumed by it. So,
do you think it's appropriate for someone to use their smartphone to look something up in the middle of podcasting?
I'm going to just not answer that.
we're seeing him through technology.
No, that's true.
I think some technology is good.
Oh, touche. All the technology.
But it's nice that we're together, though.
Oh.
High five.
Oh, that was a pretty good one.
It was.
Except I've been holding this hot mug, and I'm really sorry for how sweaty my hands are.
This
is... Did you
I was going to confession. For a second, I didn't notice. Sorry. Well, let's ask him. Father, can I go to confession over Zoom here? No?
Not over Zoom. No. No.
Why not?
Oh, gosh.
Okay, maybe don't. Maybe
important.
Don't, actually.
Body's important.
Yes. So Father Chris has chosen his recording location because this episode and probably the next one are about Lord of the Rings. And so this is at his parents' house. I was thinking you could kind of like show people but I don't know that you should because of the precarious
my laptop is on. Yeah.
But that is not a background. That is a real...
No, that's his parents' house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this room is our Lord of the Rings room. On the walls are painted the map of Middle-earth. The wallpaper border on the top is the script of the Rings of Power, or the One Ring, on the One Ring. And so this is the Hobbit hole.
Your mom wanted you to record from the bathroom.
That's right, because so it all started because in our bathroom, in this room, my mom painted like a Hobbit hole window. And so that's in our bathroom. And then it like blew up. So we started with just that. She just had fun. My mom's an artist, so she has fun with these things. She paints this Hobbit hole window. And then we're like, well, we got to make the whole bathroom kind of a Lord of the Rings theme now. So then the base of the sink is a whiskey barrel. Because that's just fitting for hobbits. And then it's just, everything kind of exploded from there.
It's fantastic.
Including in her children.
Although it's my fault. I'm actually the one that got our family into Lord of the Rings. Yeah.
How old were you?
Whoa, I think like 13 or 14.
Okay.
Probably.
By the way, is that like a biking jersey?
That's a great question. No, this is a bad Christmas sweater.
Oh, okay.
But it's Lord of the Rings. So
Nice.
we've got, I don't know if you can see, but the Fellowship, we've got the Tree of Numenor, the stars, all the things. Yeah.
Cool.
That's great. Okay, so I want to start. I forgot that this was how we were starting. Start is a strong word for 20-some minutes in, but I forgot until a couple minutes ago that this is how we were supposed to start, and so I didn't look it up, and I don't remember anything about it. But the reason we were having this episode to begin with is because a couple of episodes ago, Father Michael said something about today's not that day. And then I said, this is not that day. And then I was like reciting the Aragorn speech from the movie. I looked it up. I don't have that memorized. I've only seen the movie twice, maybe. Anyways, that outside of Mordor. And I think Father Michael said, oh, that would be a good podcast episode. This is not that day. And so I was like, oh, we can do that. And I'll have Father Chris on because he's very knowledgeable about Lord of the Rings. But I don't actually remember the speech. I only have one thought on it. And then if either of you have thoughts, you can look it up. I give you permission to look it up on your phone, Father Michael, because you probably don't know it or what I'm talking about anymore. And if
Google Star Trek, this is not that day.
You could use your thumb. Did
you just look up Star Trek? This is not that day.
She didn't even get the joke. She was too mad at me for talking into my phone.
I almost hit you, but we're being recorded. Okay, so I only have one thought on it, and then I would like to just move into anything about Lord of the Rings that Father Chris wants to talk about, which is... So the whole concept of this speech is Aragorn is trying to get all of the troops riled up, and because they're all just terrified, because they all know that they're all about to die. Everything that we say in this episode is a spoiler, so just general spoiler alert to everybody. And if you haven't read or seen Lord of the Rings, then go do that immediately. They all know that they're about to die. Like, this is like the Battle of the 300, right? You know, they're basically just trying to buy time and distract Sauron. And so that Frodo can destroy the ring. And so he's trying to get them riled up, and he's saying, like, all of these terrible things are going to happen, but they're not going to happen right now. And like, we're all going to be destroyed. We're all going to be overtaken. We're all going to be this. We're all going to be that. It's all going to be awful and horrible and terrible and all of the things. But it's not today. And it works, right? They get a little bit of courage and all of that. And this I think this speech is only in the movie. Is that correct, Father Chris? It's not in the book?
I'm going to talk about that, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
And which I have a comment on about things that are in the movie and not the book. But the thing I was thinking of is where I think this actually applies well to the spiritual life is we can become panicked and shut down at the thought of future battle and at the thought of like spiritual warfare or just human difficulties that we're going to encounter. Whereas the Lord gives us the grace that we need in the moment that we need it. He doesn't give us grace for tomorrow. He doesn't give us grace for even an hour from now. He only gives us the grace that we need right now, which, you know, Father Michael and I have talked on the podcast many times about how I had poor little Dokmoy who are literally sitting at my feet. I had no idea how hard this was going to be when I started this vocation. And I think if I had, I wouldn't have done it because I would have just been panicked and overwhelmed. And so I just wouldn't have had the courage to do it. But the Lord wasn't asking me to live as a life-professed nun when I entered the monastery, right? He was only giving me the graces to be a Dokimos, and then he was only giving me the graces to be a Rasifor. And so in his in his mercy, he like protected me from even seeing those future difficulties. But when we do see the future difficulties, that can become a distraction from actually being receptive to his graces in the present. That was my thought about it.
Yeah. And that actually reminds me of our ordinations last year, just seeing these young guys get ordained. And the first thought that came to my heart was just, they have no idea. In the sense of like the depth and the beauty and the love and like what is about to happen to their hearts and like what the beginning of what, and there's just so much life, right? But yeah, you can't know. Like today is not the day. We can get so caught up in what could happen that our hearts actually aren't disposed to receive what is going to happen when it comes.
Do you have anything to say after looking it up? Are you just going to read someone else's comment about this speech?
Oh, they wrote it out.
Oh, the speech. Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't going to play the video on here. You'd get mad at me again. I'm just kidding. There's also something about the fearlessness that comes even from, you in the Roman Catholic Church, Father, correct me if I'm wrong, it's much more explicit, but the time of Advent is not only an anticipation of the coming of the nativity of Christ, it's the coming of the second coming. And the anticipation of the second coming is a major theme of the Advent season for Roman Catholics. And I love that. I think it's really beautiful that there's there is a certain, I almost used a foul language text.
He doesn't use foul language.
I know. But it provides a certain courage and even a healthy recklessness to the next day. What the devil tries to give us as anxiety, we can go into a certain bravery and saying, I don't even know if I'm going to have tomorrow. Like I'm so worried, but this is the memento mori. This is the skulls I have on my chotki. There's the reminder that we are going to die, and that there is again, we don't look forward to that, although I kind of do. But there is a semblance of, why am I so worried? And this is, of course, all over the scriptures. Why am I so worried about the future if literally that day may never come? And so there's something about we can live in the moment. We can live in this day. We can be very conscious of what's going on right now. Honestly, I've done this in a bad way as a kid. When I would lie, we were talking about that, because you lie, which of course is sin. I'm not saying you should do this, but as a kid, I remember like adding to the lie, just hoping I never got caught, and I with kind of reckless abandon adding to it, and then all of a sudden you get caught up in it. I oftentimes see criminals doing this, even on like YouTube and things like this. You get caught up in like, okay, the day did come when all my lies got caught up with me, so we don't want to do that. But there is a semblance of in the spiritual life and in our practical life, we can say, I'm going to live in this moment and have the courage of this moment, because tomorrow, actually, what I'm so worried about may not even happen.
And can I tie that into the way that the book communicates this for Aragorn? Because so it's one of the things that like, and in a movie, there's only so much you can do, right? In order to communicate the person's presence and the power that his presence is having over people, you have to give him words. He has to say something. In the book, Aragorn doesn't give a speech. So Tolkien says that Aragorn stood silent and stern as one lost in thought of things long past or far away, but his eyes gleamed like stars that shine brighter as the night deepens.
Did you just say all of that from memory?
Yeah, but I like Lord of the Rings. Like, so yeah, I have a lot. I wish I had as much scripture memorized as I had Lord of the Rings. Like, I really do. So, right, there's this sense of like his eye. He's silent and stern, and his eyes are so focused on who knows what, but on something that's giving him this hope, and he is just shining. And everyone around him is infected by that presence, right? The movie has to give him words so that we can see the impact that his presence has. But I think it's indicative of like the silent presence of God in our lives, the silent presence of a beloved in our lives, right? A loved one who's just with us. And what that person's communicating to us of God's power, of God's goodness, so often that we don't even know, right? And so I just think Tolkien has just beautifully articulates that power of Aragorn's presence, of his virtue in that scene. That
reminds me of what Mother Cecilia said at the entrance last night. She said it to Madison and Rose earlier in the day, but then again at the entrance itself to everyone who was present, because we were talking earlier in the day about just, nerves. And someone said, maybe Mother Petra said, it's a good thing that you don't have to, like, at least at the entrance, you don't have to say anything. So at the entrance, like the one entering the monastery gets prayed over by the bishop and then receives a blessing from the bishop, and then he blesses their headscarf and their cross, and then they receive those, and I put on Madison's, and then Mother Petra put on Rose's, and but the dokimoi never speak in all of that. And I think at the tonsure as well, you don't speak. And so it's not until our life profession that we actually respond to the bishop. And Mother Cecilia was saying, so at first it was this joke of like, at least it's a good thing you don't have to speak at the entrance, because you might, I don't know if you remember this, Father Michael, but at my tonsure, you came to see me when I was in the choir loft right before the tonsure, because I was in silence all day. And you came up and you were like, how are you feeling? And I was like, I think if I eat anything, I might projectile vomit. And you were like, maybe don't eat anything. but again, at the tonsure, I didn't have to say anything. And so anyways, it started as a joke, but then Mother Cecilia was like, but you don't have to say anything, because your lives speak much more than any words that you can say. And which I think I will say that I have I'm not an aficionado about Lord of the Rings at all. So I've read the books once. I'm rereading them right now, and I've seen the movies once or twice. But so there might be way more than this, but there's one part of the movies that really upsets me, and only one part, because I actually think, so I totally agree with what you just said about this speech. Like, it needed to be in the movie because you needed to communicate something that's invisible, and can only be communicated in that way. And I think that's fine, and that's what you have to do in movies when it's made from a book. But the one part of the movies that I really disagreed with was the whole bit that happens with Sam and Frodo and Gollum with the lamba spread. Do you know the part that I'm talking about?
Oh,
And that part of the movie makes me so angry because it's not actually representative of the relationship that Sam and Frodo have. Like, if you're going to add things into a movie, as long as it's showing the spirit of the book and it's like articulating that in some way, but it's like they would have never separated like that. Like,
and I would argue it's even opposed to the relationship Frodo and Sam have in the movie.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, it reveals this beautiful bond that they have, and it like comes out of nowhere that this happens. He's trying to, Peter Jackson, the director, is trying to just express the power of the ring over Frodo, but I don't think a good call.
I didn't like it. So that's my beef with the movie.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
I had a quick question. Father, if you can quote that again, it said Aragorn in the book, it said Aragorn was silent and stern. I use that without that eloquence in marriage prep, or even in young people that are discerning marriage, because I think that's the point, that when you're discerning marrying somebody, that's the point that you get when there's you're both looking at the mission and the hardships of life together. And I remember, again, I've shared the story before, I know, but I was sitting one time talking with Father Milan Kasparik's wife, and I said, I'm a vocations director. Can you give me any advice? We're kind of reanalyzing how we deal with married priesthood and you know, do we accept married men to the seminary, and what does that look like? How do we know when a married man's ready to discern priesthood on top of marriage and things like this? And she just said it very simply and beautifully. She said, for the first part of a marriage, you're just looking at each other and analyzing this relationship and things like this. She said, when you get to the point where you're standing next to each other, looking in the same direction, namely on mission together, that's when you can start discerning priesthood. And I thought a lot of young people, especially young men, when they're discerning marriage, they get caught up in just looking at each other type thing. I enjoy being around you. You're funny. You know, I want to hang out with you more. I'm attracted to you. All these things, but they need to be reminded, what's it going to look like when you guys are just very comfortable and resting in your relationship as much as you can. That never really happens fully, but that you're looking the same direction. You're on mission together. When the hardships of life come, when children, you know, with struggles in the world, financial struggles, all these things, can you be so comfortable in your spouse that you're looking silently and sternly at the enemy of the world, sin, all the things of this world, but you're doing it together. And I think that's when you can discern, here is someone I want to marry, because here's someone that I know I could do that with. I know I could have that dedication to the same mission, and that we will support each other, and between the two of us we'll handle all of these things just fine. You know, so I did what one man did in Aragorn. I think that's what the couple needs to be doing when they're discerning someone who they're going to ask to marry them.
And I think you see that in Aragorn's relationship with Arwen, who's his betrothed, basically, because he spends most of his life like on mission away from Arwen, like until they get married. He's just like doing all these things, and she's kind of silently in the background aiding him in these different ways. And she makes the banner. She makes his banner for that. Like when he becomes king and charges into battle, it's the banner that she made. And it's like she is aiding him on his mission to be king, to be who he's supposed to be, right? And so I think it's a beautiful relationship that Tolkien articulates between those two.
Amen.
All right, Father Chris, what would you like to talk about next?
There's so many things. So
we're gonna do a whole other podcast on this, and we'll cut. We won't do any banter for the next episode, so that we can just jump right in for the sake of time and you getting to the airport.
Okay, so what I was thinking it would be fun to talk about was the role that technology plays in the books. I don't know if we have enough time. We can maybe do that. Well, why don't we start it and we'll see how it goes. So Tolkien says that he wrote these books basically with the idea of mortality and the machine in mind. That basically fall, mortality, and machine. So, right, there's a fall in the stories. In every great story, there's always a fall, right? Because that's just the human condition. And because of that fall, there's mortality. That death comes into the world. And then there's this desire to preserve things from death. And so there's this desire to create machines that will give us more power over decay, over change, so that we're not suffering from the effects of the fall as much. And so Tolkien writes these stories to examine what happens when our lives become so much about grasping for power rather than living for goodness, for virtue, and that we end up living diminished lives. And so this is why when someone wears the ring of power that Sauron created, he begins to diminish. Because so Bilbo says, right, I feel stretched and thin, like butter scraped over too much bread. Right? So this is what happens when we I think we experience this in our use of technology. Like, we have all these things going on. We have 1,000 emails that we still have to respond to. We have all these texts. We have all these relationships we're trying to maintain because we're so afraid of the effects of death, of separation in our lives. And we feel stretched, like butter scraped over too much bread. And so when we entrust ourselves too much to our technologies, we become their slaves, right? So Tolkien opposes this or holds up for us a kind of counterexample in the elves and their art, where they're just like, they're able to preserve, but the goal is not to dominate creation, to have more control over it. It's just to bring to flourishing what already lies inherent in the thing itself. So those are some thoughts, I think. And so, right, you have Frodo who destroys the ring. Like, the whole point is that they have to destroy this ring of power, which is actually one of the things my friends all think that I'm Frodo, not so much Tom Bombadil, because I want to throw our smartphones into Mount Doom. But I appreciate Tom Bombadil. I think they both have the same goal, which is just this renunciation of a claim to power so that we're able to receive and live according to the law of the gift, right? In which we're able to appreciate beauty without grasping for it. So those are some initial thoughts that I have. I can go in a lot of different directions, but I'll throw that out there.
I think that this relates, as we record this, we're still in a fasting season. When it comes out, we'll be in a feasting season. But it relates to our concept of fasting. And Alexander Schmemann, who says, when we, during the fasting periods, if we only eat what Adam and Eve ate in the garden before there was any grasping, before there was any fall, if we just eat what they ate, namely vegetables, nuts, things like that, and if we're truly vegan in that way, which we try to be as Byzantines, then everything we eat is pure gift. And it's not, and we can have a certain gratitude for it, which we do all season long, of course, even with meat. But there's a certain time during the fasts where we look back and we say, we're eating what was eaten when everything was not only given as a gift, but received as a gift and acknowledged. And there's something about that to say the freedom that the elves have, as I'm hearing you, Father, the freedom the elves have to just live within the bounds of gift and not grasp. I mean, this is what the Israelites and the Hebrews, when they were given the land of the tribes, they looked to marry outside of what God gave them. They looked to move and conquer outside of what God gave them. There was a discontent and an attempt to grasp and to control control and to form their lives themselves for what they wanted, rather than just saying, this is gift. Let me find within this gift the contentment, the joy that God intends when he gives me this gift.
It actually, Father, that's great, because it reminds me of the offertory and the Roman liturgy, which is something that I've been praying with more and more recently. But just the prayer that we say is, "Blessed are you, Lord God of all creation, for through your goodness we have received the bread we offer you, or the wine we offer you. Work of human hand, fruit of the earth and work of human hands." So there's this beautiful relationship that man has with creation, where it's receptive and also creative, or what Tolkien would call self-creative, right? That it brings to flourishing what's already inherent in the grains and in the grapes. And so our liturgy itself can really form our appreciation for creation, right? And right living in this world. Going back to sort of an existence that we lost in Eden.
That's funny. I've been praying about something very similar these past few weeks, ever since I prayed that Akathist of Thanksgiving with one of my spiritual daughters, and I talked about it a little bit on the podcast. But because the Akathist of Thanksgiving is all about, you prayed with this as well, right, Father Chris, on Thanksgiving? And it's all about the gift and the beauty of creation and God in creation and thanking him for creation. And I was thinking of this with your homily yesterday, Father Michael, in which you were so beautifully talking about how the fall, it damaged our relationship with God. It damaged our relationship with one another, but it also damaged our relationship with creation. And that relationship with creation needs redeemed as well. And so I've talked many times on the podcast about how there's just this very thin line that we're called to walk as Christians between idolatry and iconoclasm, because we can turn to creation as our God, which we often do. In some sense, that's what we're doing in every sin. Or we can say, I'm above this. I don't need these things in creation, and reject them. And so the first is idolatry, and the second, iconoclasm. Instead of seeing, I was thinking of this. I was going to mention this at the beginning of the podcast, but I think it's really relevant now. Our last episode, I think Father Michael, was the one about nostalgia. And I was trying to articulate, and I think I did a poor job of it, trying to articulate, that's literally why I left those there, Madison. I was trying to articulate the difference in like how nostalgia manifests when someone the nostalgia is for like the material thing that's there versus the home to which it's drawing them. And I brought up the question of like, if nostalgia is an ache for home, what have you made your home? What is this thing making you ache for? And Father Chris had said in a letter to me recently, after I think that episode, he said, call me sentimental. And then parenthetically, he said, or maybe sacramental. And I realized like that's the distinction that I was looking for in the nostalgia episode. It's the difference between sentimentality and sacramentality. And I was thinking of this as we were even talking about like Aragorn's speech in the movie, portraying what's invisible in the book, and needing to do that is like, that's what makes it sacramental. Yeah,
and that's something, and again, Tolkien is very explicit about this, that the temptation is always to try to make the work of our own hands the place that we find comfort, rather than reminders of the real home that we're looking for. And whenever there's a fall in the Lord of the Rings stories, in the cosmos that Tolkien creates, it's always because of this grasping, trying to make this our own home. And the result of this, the result of the fall, is that the world in Tolkien's universe, right, the world becomes round rather than flat. So rather than a world that is like moves towards something that transcends it, it's wrapped in on itself. And I think this is what a lot of us find when we get caught up in our own heads. There's nothing to bring us out of ourselves, right? We're just trying to constantly analyze, figure it out. So Saruman, one of the wizards that falls prey to the ring's power, starts down this path of trying to like have more and more control over everything by breaking it down into its smallest pieces. And Gandalf tells him, he who has broken a thing to find out what it is has left the path of wisdom. And I think it's something that in the West, we have maybe more of a temptation towards, because like, right.
Meaning Western world.
In the Western world, but also even I would say in just like Latins, right?
Okay.
And those who have inherited the tradition from Rome. Right. There's much more of like, we're going to make these very clear distinctions about a lot of things, so that we can rightly understand it. And it's led to a lot of good scientific breakthroughs. But we can get so caught up in making these distinctions and dividing everything that we can actually lose sight of the mystery. And when we do that, we're no longer looking at a living thing. We're looking at dead things that we've broken down, so that we know exactly what it is and I can fit it into my way of seeing things. And I get closed in on myself when that happens.
Metropolitan Anthony Bloom talks about this very eloquently in his book, Beginning to Pray, which is one of my favorite books. It's so good. But he talks about, it's about control. It's about the temptation to possess beauty. And he talks about how you can appreciate the beauty of a flower, but if you pluck the flower to keep it for yourself, then the flower dies. And so in attempting to, which I think is the same concept of, you have to break it to look into it, to understand it.
When you take a photograph of something, you've removed yourself from the experience of seeing beauty in front of you, right?
It also never works. All the pictures, Madison and I hiked to 14er last year, and all the pictures we tried to take just like don't do justice to the reality. Because technology can never do justice to the reality.
And that's the key, right? How do we limit our technology so that it does point us towards something other than itself? And the way that we've created our technologies in our world are completely the opposite of that. Like they're designed to suck us in to themselves rather than to get us off them to enter back into the mystery of reality.
I have a quick question, but we try to wait till next time. But I don't know.
But he's going to ask it.
I'm going to ask it anyway. And maybe this will be a teaser for next time if you want to go there, Father. But why invisibility? Like, why is that the primary result, at least on one level of putting the ring on? So is that for next time? That's for next time. Okay.
So I think one of the terrible and addicting parts of technology is they try to suck you in for more in tech. So we're going to pause there. And if you listen next week and download this again and open your phone back up, then you can hear us talk about more about the dangers of technology.
And if you go on Patreon and pay us, we'll give it to you early. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
No,
I'm kidding.
No, that's not true. But I should. I'm sorry. I didn't pull up the stuff, and it's so far away. So we're not giving any shout outs to patrons this week. But maybe we could give another shout out.
So, you guys, listeners, faithful listeners, remember Father Nathan Adams and his wife, Allie, who came on our podcast to talk about married priesthood, since he's a married priest and she's a priest's wife, and also to talk about the
escape room.
The escape room. What was the episode called? The
Culture of Bears.
The Culture of Bears. We talked about the escape room, which I have to remind listeners was not my topic idea. It was Mother's idea. So Father Nathan and Allie were on those. Father Nathan now has his own podcast. It's going to be on all the platforms soon. It may even be on already when this comes out. It probably is, but I know it's on YouTube. His podcast is called Searchers of the Lost. And I can say that it is much more of an academic. I know it broke. Mm-hmm. Can you fix it, woman? Okay, we'll edit that out.
No, we
won't. I'm kidding, listeners. I'm kidding.
We could talk about the roles of men and women in Lord of the Rings next time.
I'm kidding. That was just right out of her. But he has his own podcast called Searchers of the Lost, and it's a very academic podcast. It's really, but also fun to listen to because it's Father Nathan. But he's really going to deal with all the really tough, controversial topics between Catholicism and Orthodoxy. That's his desire to answer all those questions and have discussions about those things. So
good on him.
The first episode is, do we call ourselves Catholic? Do we call ourselves Orthodox? We in the Byzantine Catholic Church. The second episode comes out tomorrow as we record. No, Wednesday as we record, and I'm on it talking about why I am Byzantine Catholic and not Orthodox. And Father Nathan is as well. So
that's fantastic.
So yeah, and he's going to keep on going. He's going to bring in great people. So Searches of the Lost, check it out.
Great. It's an academic podcast, so you will never hear Mother Natalia on it.
Yeah, me on the second episode. I don't know what he was thinking.
Okay, great. We are also on all of the platforms. And you can support our nonprofit Fotina on Patreon if you so desire. And those donations go to support this podcast, and but also the poor and tithing to our churches and other Catholic evangelization projects. So I think we did some things actually to help Father Nathan get his podcast started. So,
and we haven't announced it yet because they haven't announced it yet, but we did give a full set of equipment to another podcast, and the entire podcast is going to be about controlling our use of technology.
It's true.
The whole podcast.
Yeah, you would love
That's
this.
the entire topic of the whole podcast. So anyway, we'll announce it when it comes out.
Yeah.
But they should have you on, Father, and you should definitely hear what they have to say. I'll share it with you.
Absolutely.
Off
in the next episode, we'll talk about your book because that's very related. Okay, so Also, we're on like Instagram and stuff. I'm just going to skip most of the technology stuff because I feel like it's in the spirit of this podcast. And actually, I'm trying to save time. So, prayer intentions. I never think of this ahead of time. I'm going to ask for prayers for our new Dokamoy. I'm saying it. Our new Dokamoy, Madison and Rose. Please pray for them. I took them both, so Father Michael has to have a different prayer intention.
I'm going to pray for the salvation of their souls.
Oh!
And their perseverance in the monastic life and their discernment of God's true will and peace in their heart and joy and courage in being tested.
Okay, so Father Michael doesn't think that my prayers count because they didn't have enough words in them. So, Father Chris, can you please give an intention? And then if Madison and Rose want to, they can give intentions as well.
Before the intention, can I just make a prayer of gratitude for the Dokamoy, for their gift of self to the Lord in this vocation? And then also I would ask for prayers for, as this comes out, I think, the seminarians from my seminary will be on retreat. And so just prayers for an openness, that the Lord open their hearts to his presence, that they have clarity in his love and in his will for them.
Okay, and this is Rose. And I would like to ask for prayers for a lot of people I know. They work with women in crisis pregnancies, and especially around the holidays and during then, there tends to be an uptick in women that need help that are pregnant. So I would ask that you pray for the people that are out there serving those women and for those who in their families right now are experiencing difficulties.
I would like to ask for prayers for my parents, who were the ones who came to my entrance, and my friend Libby.
Great. All right, Father Chris, Father Michael, good to be with you guys.
You too.
Love you both. Father Chris, can you please give us a blessing?
The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
Through the intercession of the Blessed Virgin Mary, Saint Joseph, Saint John Paul II, and all the angels and saints, may Almighty God bless you, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Go in peace.
Thanks be to God.